Welcome into our Northern Nevada Toyota Dealers Mountain West men's basketball preview show. He is Chris Murray. I'm Shannon Kelly. Thanks for joining us here inside our Nevada Sportsnet studios. Over the next half an hour, Chris will take a deep dive into the Mountain West as tip-off is almost here. We'll take a look at some of the teams, but first we'll start off with things right here in the biggest little city, the Nevada Wolfpack, led by fifth-year head coach Steve Alford. This is a group that went 22-11 last year, made it to the NCAA tournament for the first time during Coach Alford's tenure here with the Wolfpack, and Nevada will look to build off that with a lot of pieces returning this season.
I mean, this is a very experienced team. This is a very talented team, and this is a team that seems poised to take that next step. Obviously, Nevada was very good last year, 22 wins, fourth in the Mountain West, into the NCAA tournament with the last at-large bid in the field. Can they go from good to great? That's the big question. Can they win a championship in the Mountain West? Can they make a run in the NCAA tournament? Obviously, that was the expectation when Nevada hired Steve Alford, gave him a 10-year contract worth almost $12 million. The expectation was this guy would keep the championships coming to Nevada after the Eric Musselman era. Obviously, there's been some ups and downs, but a very big up last year. And now that next step, going from one of the better teams in the Mountain West to the best team in the Mountain West, not an easy step to take, but it seems like all the pieces are in place for Steve Alford's bunch to do that in his fifth season here in Reno.
Coach Alford, no stranger to the Mountain West during his time with New Mexico, led the Lobos to 4 Mountain West regular season titles, 2 Mountain West tournament titles. So we'll see indeed if the Wolfpack can take that next step. Here's Coach Alford and Jared Lucas.
Guys like Jared, who has experience, but no experience in the Mountain West last year. He knows what it is now. Keenan knows exactly what this league is. Trey Coleman, exactly what this league's about. Daniel, who's now healthy. KJ, who's been in this league a long time. So we've got guys that have been in this league and understand this league, and now you put the new guys in there that maybe not know the league, but they're getting to see every day in practice. Wow, this is how big our league is. This is how physical our league is. This is how athletic our league is. So our guys are battling each other, and they're battling for minutes. We're a deep team, so who's not going to get minutes, who does get minutes is going to be to what happens here in October and early November. They're competing for that.
As a team and having guys last year, that was their first experience in the NCAA tournament, probably wasn't the best experience, but it's also good for us. It's a learning experience where when you have veteran guys, going into our 5th year, now there's nothing we haven't seen. We've obviously played the Mountain West tournament. We've played the NCAA tournament. We've done pretty much everything you can do. But the next step is winning a Mountain West championship, regular season championship, tournament championship. But everybody says they want to do it this time of the year. It's what you do in the off season that proves it. All right, yeah, we're going to be the champs if we do our consistent work.
Nevada returns a lot of production this year, including Jared Lucas, Keenan Blackshear, one of the best backcourt duos in the Mountain West. Chris, what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of this group this year?
It certainly starts in the backcourt when you talk about the strengths. You're talking about 2 all-conference players coming back. Jared Lucas, Keenan Blackshear could both be in the running for Mountain West Player of the Year. You also have Trey Coleman, who's a wing. He's going to be a 4th-year starter. There's really a situation where Nevada could start 5 seniors, including 2 in their 5th year of college and 1 in their 6th year of college, that being KJ Himes, if he could stay healthy. That kind of experience. These guys are 23, 24 years old. You don't get that very often on a college campus. In terms of the weaknesses, you don't see a lot of front court scoring. Obviously, Will Baker transferring to LSU, Darian Williams going to Texas Tech. Those are your starting power forwards and centers. And then the overall shooting. Last year in Nevada, around 125th in the nation in three-point shooting, and they did lose a couple of pretty good three-point shooters. So I think that's the question mark there. I think what Nevada is banking on is, yes, they're going to lose some offense in the front court, but they should be much better defensively in the front court. KJ Himes, a very good defensive player. A lot of blocks last season before he had that season-ending back surgery. They added Jariah Coleman, 3rd in the nation among junior college players in blocks last season. And then Tylen Pope, their only Division I transfer, 6'6", undersized power forward. That's also a guy known for his toughness, defense, physicality. So the hope is the backcourt can score for you, the front court can defend for you, and that all adds up to 25 wins and a shot at a Mountain West championship.
A lot of new pieces, as we saw there. Nick Davidson also, he comes back this year, so we'll see what he can do, but a lot of new faces. Which of the one newcomers excites you the most?
Yeah, I think if you're talking about the freshman, for me it's Tyler Rollison. This is a 6-foot point guard from Long Beach, was a very good high school player. It looks like he's been able to step in and give some immediate minutes. Now it's going to be hard because it's a very talented backcourt, but I think that's a guy who can play from day one. Obviously, Jazz Gardner, the 3rd highest rated recruit Nevada's ever signed out of high school, but in terms of the guys who came from the transfer portal, Tylen Pope is the big one. That's a guy who's probably going to play about 20 minutes per game, and he's more a glue guy. These guys aren't going to step in necessarily and be all-conference players. Nevada already has the all-conference players on their roster. It's can they fill a void and a hole that maybe last year's team was lacking in terms of being able to take that next step.
So we'll see as the Wolfpack begin their season hosting Sacramento State at Lawler Event Center on November 7th. Coming up next here on our Mountain West show, we'll take a look at some of the other contenders in the conference. We'll start things out with the San Diego State Aztecs. Back here on our Mountain West men's basketball preview show. First up, taking a look at the San Diego State Aztecs, the Mountain West preseason favorites. Chris, rightfully so, after that Final Four run and national championship runner-up finish. The Aztecs return a few players this year in Lamont Butler, Darian Trammell, and Jaden Ledee, but also lose a handful of guys, including Matt Bradley and Keyshawn Johnson.
Yeah, Nathan Mensah as well. He was the two-time Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. So you're talking about 5 of their 9 rotation players no longer in the fold, but the expectation is they're still going to be very good. Are they going to make it to the national championship game? It takes a lot of special things to happen just to make it to the Sweet 16, so maybe not that. But the guards are very good. They added Reese Waters. He's a transfer from USC, who's a very talented player as well. So this is a team that we know they're going to play defense. We know they're going to find a way on offense. They're going to win close games. The DNA is in this team to go out and win championships. So while the expectation is maybe they take a little step back as they lose their top scorer and their best defensive player, I don't think anyone's looking at San Diego State and saying, oh, you know, we're going to take this team down very easily. It's going to be a very difficult challenge to beat San Diego State and win a Mountain West championship, because we know that the Mountain West championship goes through Viejas Arena. It goes through San Diego State, and that's been proven over the last 15 years.
Here's Coach Dutcher and Darian Trammell about the season.
I'm not that guy that wants to beat them down and say what you did last year is over. I want them to still enjoy it. I mean, it was such a magical thing that we did together, and so I know they're a mature group, and so as we get closer to tip-off and we get into next year, we can't live on what we did last year. We have to focus on the present, and there'll be a time to do that, but it's not now. We're still enjoying what we did last year. You always take comfort as a coach when you have veterans returning, and to have 2 starters returning and then basically our 6th and 7th man, we feel like we have pieces that have played at a high level at San Diego State. And then you add returning guys that couldn't get on the floor, you know are good. You add a couple freshmen and a transfer or 2, and that's the beauty of coaching. Now you have to piece it all together again and try to make it work.
I feel like the pressure is always going to be there, but that's the thing about the guys on our team. I feel like everyone's built for that type of pressure in that moment. So our coach is going to have us prepare for every game, and just carrying out those game plans is going to take care of itself and alleviate all that pressure that we may feel.
Moving on now to take a look at the Boise State Broncos, led by head coach Leon Rice. The Broncos made it to back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances. Chris, couldn't quite get a W. Is this the year that the Broncos make it to the NCAA tournament, come out with a W? They have a lot of guys returning, including Tyson Dagenhart, Max Rice, Chibuzo, Agbo, and added some new pieces. Yeah,
I mean, it's a very talented team. Leon Rice went into the offseason saying he wanted to build a super team to get that first NCAA tournament victory. 0-9 the Broncos are in the big dance in its history. Leon Rice has built a 20-game winner year in and year out, and really the number 2 team in this conference over a long period of time. Obviously, Nevada and Utah State have had some good seasons as well, but Boise State has been right there with San Diego State for a long, long time. Defensively, they've gotten a lot better the last couple of seasons. You mentioned Tyson Dagenhart. He's a potential Mountain West Player of the Year. Max Rice, just a very savvy player there at guard. He's a 5th-year senior. So all the pieces are in place to win an NCAA tournament game, but a lot of work needs to be done before actually accomplishing that.
Here is Coach Rice ahead of the season.
This group is, I got not only a lot of veterans, but I think I got a lot of winners, guys that know how to win games, and that's so valuable. And you always feel better as a coach knowing that, okay, these guys just figured out, and you know, because the difference between a good year and a great year is your guys found a way to win a bunch of close games, and that's what separates your years from those. When you have good teams, you won half your close games. When you have great teams, you just, oh my gosh, we found a way to, you know. So sometimes there's a little luck involved when there's a lot of good teams playing each other, but then sometimes it's just the matter of having a lot of winners.
We had a really good offseason. We had a foreign trip to Canada, got to play 3 games, and for a team that's so new with 3 incoming freshmen and 3 transfers and some guys who haven't played in 2 years, just to be able to get the kinks out in July and August was really big for us and a huge stepping stone for us, and really looking forward to build off that.
So we'll see if the Broncos have maybe a little bit of an advantage taking that foreign tour to Canada, having a little extra time on the court. this offseason. Moving on now to Colorado State, led by sixth-year head coach Nico Medved. The Rams with an off year last season. Chris, that was a team the past 3 years before that won 20-plus games. Isaiah Stevens, he's back for his fifth and final run. Colorado State should be right up there in the mix.
Obviously, Evan Stevens is huge. He's the preseason Mountain West Player of the Year. He's an All-American candidate at point guard. And like you said, they did take a big step back last year. They were a number 6 seed in the NCAA tournament 2 years ago, and then they lose David Roddy to early entry to the NBA draft. He's a first-round draft pick. So you expect to regress a little bit. They probably regressed a little bit more than they thought they would. They also lost a couple of key guards to the transfer portal. But I think this is still a very solid team. Nico Medved is a very good coach. But this is a very important season to show that last year was just a one-year step back and not maybe the new norm where you're kind of hovering more around 500 than truly competing at the top of the conference.
Here is Coach Medved and Isaiah Stevens.
The margins are really, really small. You know, usually you've got to stay healthy. You've got to have a team that's connected, that understands, what that challenge is going to look like. Usually close games. It's going to come down to finding a way to win close games. It's going to come down to finding a way when you have one that doesn't go your way. Can you rebound quickly from that and move on to the next? And when you have a couple ones go your way, can you realize the next one's going to be just as tough? And having that consistency throughout a season, I think, is what it really takes. And you have to find a way to win some of these big games and get over the top.
Last year was definitely a little disappointed in the way it shook out, but I remember we were talking about this earlier. You got to be willing to use it as motivation throughout the offseason. We all had a pretty bitter taste in our mouth, so that definitely increases the chip that we have. But there's also a part of that you have to leave in the past, right? You can't carry all your luggage with you, and it's a new team, new slate of games, new season, new motives, and I'm super excited for the direction that we're headed in, and so far it's been a good offseason.
Taking a look now at the New Mexico Lobos, led by third-year head coach Richard Pitino, the last unbeaten team in college basketball last season. New Mexico also returns their backcourt duo of Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn Jr., one of the best in the conference as well. Chris, let's see what New Mexico can do here.
I think it comes down to defense. I mean, this team's going to be able to score. They have the last couple of seasons. Can they become a great defensive team? Because if you're not a great defensive team, you're not winning the Mountain West, you're not winning NCAA tournament games. Obviously, Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn, that's a great starting point. And they added maybe the best transfer in the conference, Iona's Nelly Jr. Joseph up there in the front court, a 6'10" player. So the pieces are there, but will they have the kind of defensive intensity required to go out there and truly, win a Mountain West championship, which are the goals and the aspirations at New Mexico?
All right. More to come here on our Mountain West men's basketball preview show. We'll take a look at the UNLV Runnin Rebels right after this. Back here on our Northern Nevada Toyota Dealers Mountain West men's basketball preview show. Moving along, taking a look at the UNLV Runnin Rebels, led by third-year head coach Kevin Kruger. What can UNLV do this year, Chris? They lost a handful of guys, but also picked up a handful of guys from the portal, including the Boone twins, Kaylin Boone, Jalen Hill from Oklahoma, and then a few big freshmen as well.
And Deaton Thomas Jr., he's a local product, actually reclassified to be able to play college 1 year early, and he was the Mountain West preseason freshman of the year. He's a very good electric point guard, not a tall kid, but someone who's expected to come in and play a lot of minutes and really drive this offense. It seems like every year UNLV has a brand new roster. Under Coach Kruger, there's not been a lot of cohesion from 1 year to the next. So it's how do those transfer pieces actually fit together? I mean, you can guess, but until they're actually playing together, until you're building your culture, until you see who the leaders emerge, it is kind of a guessing game in non-conference, and we'll see how it rounds into form during Mountain West play. 2 years ago, Coach Kruger's first season, it worked really well. They did get better throughout the season. Last year, they never really quite got to that point. They had E.J. Harkless, but not a lot of other really talented players. I actually thought UNLV, their overall roster was not super talented last year, which is pretty unusual because UNLV, you can always know they're going to have talented players. It's will they be able to gel and get the most out of that talent? Last year, I just thought the roster wasn't very good, and this year, on the paper, it looks really good. Now, can they come together and do something special there for Coach Kruger?
And they started off strong last year as well. So here is Coach Kruger on his two freshmen, Deaton Thomas and Brooklyn Hicks.
In the current college game, it's always tough for freshmen to come in and make an impact, but the way those two guys play, I mean, you got Mr. Basketball in Washington, you got Mr. Basketball in Nevada, clearly high-level players, but I think what they both do is they both have an ability to make an impact on games just by the way they play. High IQ, play incredibly hard. What we feel is they play the right way, just in terms of movement and caring about others and caring about their teammates and getting good results. So I think they're both in a great situation to come in and have a positive impact and helping win games right from the start.
I think our mindset is a little bit different. I said earlier, I said last year I don't think we was really much of a team. I think this year we have more of a team mindset of, we have each other's back. At the end of the day, the most important thing is winning. So, we may not always like the coach's decision, but as long as it's a decision to impact winning, we're all for it. And so that's the difference between this team. I think we're a very mature team as far as knowing what it takes to win and knowing what we have to do to win. And I feel like as long as we take that mindset throughout the season, because it's a long season. We got to go through non-conference, conference, and then the Mountain West tournament. So I feel like if we take that mindset throughout those 3 stages, we'll be right where we want to be.
All right, moving up now to Logan, Utah. The lone new head coach in the conference comes from Utah State after Ryan Odom left for VCU. Danny Sprinkle begins his tenure with the Aggies, Chris, in a completely new roster, completely new. You don't see this much.
No, you do not see this much. Good luck to Coach Sprinkle because he returns exactly 0 points from last season's roster. Utah State was obviously very good, but Coach Odom leaving took a couple players with him to VCU, and then Sean Ainsworth, who was a tremendous player, transferred to Creighton. So it's a complete rebuild there. Now, he did bring in some very talented players. I think this is a roster that can win some games in the Mountain West, but you're talking about trying to gel guys together. There's no returning key players from last year, and that makes it very difficult to be able to go through a very rugged Mountain West, one of the 5 or 6 best conferences in the country, and pick up a lot of wins. So I think non-conference will be key for them just to get some confidence, to get some cohesion. And, it's going to be a long-term build there, but year one I could see being a little bit rough for Coach Sprinkle. He's a very good coach, but this is almost unprecedented, certainly unprecedented in the Mountain West. And you look around the NCAA Division I history, there's probably only a handful of teams that have ever returned 0 points from the previous season.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. Here is Coach Sprinkle ahead of this new chapter.
The hardest part was getting all 13, filling a roster, recruiting that late in the period and being able to get, quality talent that can compete in the Mountain West. You're looking at a high major conference, with teams that have pros, and you'll look at the coaches around here. And so, to be able to compete and to field the team, that was the most challenging. And then obviously now you got to coach them. You got to bring all those new players together, and it'll take some time. But I like our guys and how they're playing together and working together. And the one thing that we won't sacrifice on is our character. And we recruited really good kids that are in it for the right reason.
I think that one thing about being on a new team is trying to figure each other out, figure out who likes to do what and who likes to score on what pace and so on and so forth. But I think the coaches have done a good job of keeping us together, making sure that there's some cohesiveness on the floor. A big emphasis for us is defense, so that's something that we really get after, and it's part of our team DNA is to really be that nitty-gritty type team. And
moving up to the Bay Area now, take a look at the San Jose State Spartans, led by third-year head coach Tim Miles, a team that went to the CBI last year, made some noise late in the season. They return a handful of players, Chris, but they lost Omari Moore to the NBA, and then Ibrahima Diallo transferred to UCF.
Yeah, Moore's the big loss. He was the Mountain West Player of the Year last season. He did a lot of stuff for San Jose State. So Coach Miles, he's a very good coach. He gets the most out of his players. No question about that, but it's hard to replace a guy like Omari Moore. We saw that with David Roddy at Colorado State last year. So will there be a step back? He also builds his team a lot differently. He goes for a lot of size. He's going to be the biggest team in the Mountain West, and that's not necessarily how teams are built nowadays. So maybe that is their advantage, is they've got more size. Maybe they can crush teams in terms of rebounding. But coming off a 20-win season last year, that was great for San Jose State. Can they make that the new standard is the big question.
Coach Miles making some noise in the Bay Area. Here's what he had to say.
Let's face it, SJSU basketball has been down in the cellar for a long, long time. And last year we were able to move the needle and against really good teams. And when you look at, continuing to do that, really doing it again, the redo is way harder. How do you keep going? Especially in this era, we lost one of our starters to a Power 5 because, circumstances change. NIL, whatever it might be, opportunity to go back up to the high major leagues. And, that's where we're a little vulnerable. And so as you look at, how do you sustain that? I think that is the $64,000 question for old Coach Miles, is to figure out how to put that together. And it starts with, I think your heart and soul, like we talked about, those returners, those guys that are bought in and that want to carry the flag for you.
Miles, what a guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yes.
Obviously had success at Colorado State, went up to Nebraska, so he's been around the block and he can coach X's and O's.
Yes, he can. We'll wrap things up here, taking a look at the Wyoming Cowboys. Tough season last year, Chris, for Wyoming. They're looking to rebuild after they lost some guys as well, most notably Graham Ike to injury, and then he transferred to Gonzaga.
Yeah, and then they lost Hunter Maldonado, just exhausting his eligibility. So this is a team that was in the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. I actually had him on my preseason top 25, and everything went wrong last year. This isn't quite a Utah State rebuild, but they don't return a lot of guys who have been proven productive players for the Cowboys before. So can they bounce back up, maybe get to the middle of the Mountain West? Jeff Linder signed a long contract after making that NCAA tournament berth, so he's got some stability in terms of being able to build this thing back. But I think it was a shock at how poorly they played and how much they fractured last season.
All right, here is Coach Linder ahead of the season.
It's funny. I mean, as former great U.S. Senator from the state of Wyoming, Alan Simpson, who's 93 years old, who wrote me a handwritten letter at 93, and it just shows you how special a place Wyoming is, because there's very few college coaches who are getting a handwritten letter during the course of the season from a U.S. Senator. And he said, coaching's a lot like politics. One minute you're the toast of the town, and the next minute you're toast. And so obviously last year didn't go the way we wanted, but I'm really excited about the group we have, and I do think that we have the opportunity to surprise a lot of people, and I think that's kind of what Wyoming is. Wyoming is a place where we are the underdog, and we want to take on that identity. And I think we got good enough players to where we can win a lot of games, and looking forward to getting them out there.
We'll wrap things up here on our Mountain West men's basketball preview show next. Wrapping things up on our Mountain West men's basketball preview show. Chris, let's take a look at your picks for the season.
I don't want to be boring and go San Diego State, so I'm going to say Boise wins with the Broncos' Tyson Degenhart Player of the Year, and then New Mexico's Nelly Jr. Joseph as the newcomer of the year.
Well, I guess I'm boring because I'm going with San Diego State as my Mountain West champions, Tyson Degenhart as the Player of the Year, and Deaton Thomas Jr., even though he's a freshman, as the newcomer of the year. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.